I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Top Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I think we've got something special on our hands today. If you're listening to this on Sunday, tomorrow is a holiday for you, for some of you. Some of us still have to work. But as always, we're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, this, that, and this. And I'm Julian.
Hey guys, this is Jordan, and I'm really excited to talk about this today. And I feel like it happens to be about the holiday that some of you might partake in tomorrow, with Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Yeah,
it's a unique holiday. I don't think there's very many similar to this one. It had a very big stepping stone in at least our lives and most people's lives for the history of America. But it's also interesting that in some areas you don't go to work, in some areas you do go to work, or schools are shut down, or I don't know if the banks are closed.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But once again, a great holiday for, a great person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start with it. So a fun fact first to start off with, Martin Luther King Jr. was not originally named Martin. So when he was born, his dad, he was given a name, and right now it's spacing me. I don't know if you know it. Do you know this name?
I think it's Michael Luther.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it was Michael. And so his dad, went to Germany and was inspired by the Protestant revolution, and the leader of that was Martin Luther, and so Michael turned into Martin.
Yeah, I think it's a unique thing because I know if you're going through a name change, it's relatively simple today, but still a lot of steps. So I can only imagine back then and the kind of times that were then going from changing name from Michael to Martin was probably quite a bit of work. And it's interesting the ties to, that Protestant of Martin Luther and, inspiring so much to change not only your name, but your son's name also. Because obviously Martin Luther or Michael was a junior at the time,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of a huge foreshadowing moment too. I mean, not to I could imagine hey, Michael, no pressure, but I'm going to name you after this revolutionary leader. But you just do your thing.
Yeah. And I wonder if at the time when that name change happened, if Michael King was aware of what Martin Luther had done, or just kind of had a short synopsis of what the guy had done overseas and what he stood for, or if he had full, knowledge of okay, I've got this name, and it really, when people ask me, I'm going to say it's related to this, so maybe I have to do something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. There's a lot of things like the butterfly effect that could have affected what happened. But you mentioned the word stand for, and so I kind of want to go into what Martin Luther King Jr. stood for. And if those of you who are not well versed or maybe aren't know about American history and culture, Martin Luther King was a revolutionary leader for civil and social justice and change.
Yeah, and he did find a lot of, as he was growing up, he found a lot of inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi, which I didn't know beforehand, but seeing a leader in another country like that and doing the things he did so kind of peacefully, translating over what he did over here, or what Martin Luther King did over here, kind of ties over together, and I thought was fascinating to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, if those of you who know too, I feel like that was one of Martin's principles, was nonviolence when it came to protests. It would be sit-ins or marches, but as far as his goal it was never to get violent, at least on their part. Many times it wouldn't be reciprocated, unfortunately. But I mean, the road to what we have now was paved by, hard work, blood, sweat, and tears of, those before us.
Yeah. And I think it's also at that time or a little later in that time, you have on the other end of the scale, you have someone like Malcolm X, who's kind of more notably violent than Martin Luther was. But both kind of were trying to get their point across and were successful in some cases, but seeing that the way, like you said, nonviolent Martin Luther King did it and the acts that he put together, for being nonviolent were extremely successful, which you don't see a whole lot of that in today's generation.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like nowadays, I feel like it'd be more in favor or it would be probably in the best for everybody's interest if we kind of took a chapter out of that book as far as how to protest and to choose to not be violent or destructive, because more recently, the news has been, or just in events in general, have been more the other way when it comes to riots or protests. It always ends up, damaging, property or people, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's intriguing that today we have this escalation of commitment when we're trying to stand for something or, put our word out there, and it ends up being somewhat violent or rough. And maybe it's not the sole purpose of most of the people, but it always takes, that one person to ignite something and it all starts. And it's very cool that back in the, mid 50s to late 60s, when Martin was really at the top, kind of pushing his message, that people stood with him and were really locked into not being violent or harming others.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it's kind of odd because Martin Luther's kind of how he started or the events in his youth would not be as much. So when he was young, his grandmother died and he was extremely depressed and jumped out of a 2-story building and survived. And also around that time of like gestation and, becoming, maturing, he used to get whipped by his dad until he was 15. And so just such a interesting and tumultuous like path to become who he was, as far as a leader who was intellectually and emotionally probably a monolith when it came to what he like stood for and did. And I feel like I think I'm gonna not do it as justice as he would himself, but I think one of his quotes was in a surmising way was basically I can't hate any man, or I won't, because I won't let him have that power over me. Just showing like the emotional intelligence of somebody who like understands that regardless of what happens, like it's my choice to give him the power or give that person the power by me hating them.
Yeah. Which stands for a lot, even when you put in the fact when he's 15, the time frame of what was going on between people of color and the non-people of color at that time frame, and the tension and, the inciting or, I guess insulting, or just the dynamic between those two at the time, and the Jim Crow laws and this and that, to stay level-headed through most of your life, to not get in an altercation or something along those lines, when some people back in that time were trying to start an altercation because ultimately they know they were going to win, or they were going to be on a better side than the other side.
Yeah. It just seems, personally, I don't think I could fully like fathom it, being that like, granted it's came a very, very far away from then. And so it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes where, people would judge me or, judge somebody else by something that's absolutely out of their or my control. And granted, it's not perfect yet. And I don't think that something like that will, like, hopefully we keep on striving for perfection, but I don't think it's achievable as humans. We're not perfect in general, so how could we be perfect? But It's just extraordinary to like, it's hard to basically, it's hard for me to wrap my head around what it would be like to be protesting for, just the right to be treated as a full-fledged human being and respected, and to, be able to hold my dignity and things like that without it getting stripped away by somebody else because of some arbitrary thing.
Yeah. What I always like to think back on in like those scenarios is, if you've seen Forrest Gump starring Tom Hanks, they go through a scene where Forrest Gump is going to a university, and it's the first 4 or 5 African American students that get to go to this public university. And as they walk through, there's this huge crowd like inciting and throwing stuff at them as, they go through. And then like, lo and behold, you have Tom Hanks walking in the back, not knowing what's going on. But like, take away Tom Hanks' part, I couldn't imagine going to school or being the first to go to a school, and there's hundreds of people outside, obviously not on your side, and having to deal with that on a day-to-day. It wasn't like it was just that day. It was like a day-to-day basis at that time. It's a lot more powerful than like today, me going to, I don't know, like Best Buy or something, and someone's like, hey, I don't like you. Like, I don't care. But back then, when you have hundreds of violent people coming at you and saying, hey, like, you shouldn't be here, is a lot different.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. It's fundamentally different because at that time, like you said, there was numbers on one side and weren't on others, and fear mongering and terrorizing people. Because basically what it was I couldn't imagine it being not. It was terrorism, and the fact of you're controlling or trying to control people with fear. Mm. And yeah, it just seems such a far cry from today, which I'm super thankful for. But obviously this is kind of, the world is a large place, and, we're all in different parts of this, trek of wherever we're ending up to be. But, it's not perfect everywhere, I would say. But it's just interesting just to like look back and see where we come from as far as the history of, civil rights personally. And that has to do with, specifically we're talking about race, but we can also talk about gender too. It's been extraordinary, changes, as well as, sexuality and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this kind of early movement of the civil rights movement transcends into what is today. And that early civil rights movement was in somewhat part led by Martin Luther King. And there was others in different areas that didn't get as much, publishing about it, but they were still spearheading some sort of movement to get everyone on the same page. And I think that touches back on, or will touch back on that. Martin Luther King became a minister. Went to Morehouse College, went to another university after that, and then ended up at Boston University, and then came back and became a minister, which I think is interesting for a time like that to be a African-American minister. I just didn't think of that was much of like a common thing then. It might be common to his area, but it just still to me seems a little different back then.
Yeah. I think the very different part is like how educated he was compared to everyone else. And not just like obviously people that were African American or black, because obviously their higher education levels was a lot different than, going to college and everything like that, but also to, people that weren't just black. Martin Luther King was extraordinarily educated on whatever metric you want to put on it. And I think that it shows in his, leadership and everything like that. It is interesting that he decided to be like, do religious studies compared to like maybe law, like, some other notable, like, African-American lawyers. I think Thurgood Marshall is one of them, and things like that. But I think I don't know if it's innate or, he learned it from somebody, but the man can like captivate thousands of people with his own voice and telling a story and, engendering emotions at the right time. And, they're very, very precise to be a leader. I feel like those things are necessary to be a leader. And even if you don't want to look at it as far as like, if you take the historical context out of it of what they were doing, I feel like he would still be like doing something when it comes to leading, regardless of what it is. It happened to be something extraordinarily important, but it could have been leading, a company or something. And I feel like today, if I could take something out of it, I feel like, if you were an entrepreneur, you could take something out of what he's saying as far as, believing in yourself, being committed to excellence and things like that were things that were very, very important back in those days as far as what they were fighting for, but, are still relevant to what like normal daily life is about.
Yeah. Do you think his leadership style was natural, like in his genes, or do you think it was created and built like through life experience?
Well, that's a good question. I believe that he wouldn't have been Martin Luther King Jr. that we know if it wasn't for all of the things that he went through in his life, the mistreatment, the depression, the social injustice, those things incited him. And I believe that it might have been a thing where this man's extraordinarily intelligent. And I believe maybe he, sat down and thought to himself, I have to be this so that like the future is different. And, I have to be this amazing leader, because like, what other choice do I have? Raise my children and, what's going on and how things are today. I think that's why he became a leader, not necessarily innately, which I do believe he naturally was gifted in something, but I believe out of necessity, compounded that growth into like, what the history books, lay out today.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely takes a lot of, just different pressures and variables to create the leadership style that Martin Luther King had. I agree on that. And I also think it takes a lot of like personal drive, because obviously there's a point where most people would get on what they're doing and hit a wall and be like, I can't do this. Like, it's not safe for me, or it's not safe for my family, and like stop or take a step back. And I guess an example would be, he was a little bit further in what he was doing. And sometimes, seeing violence or protest or people against you means you're on the right track. Well, it could also mean you're on the complete wrong track, but in your mind, you're on the right track because you're getting some sort of reaction or bringing attention to it. Is when the incident of having his, the brick through his window, or like his car, or the car lit on fire, or the car bomb, or what it may be, is like, at most point you see that happen and it's that near to your family that you go, all right, I might take, or most people go, all right, I'm taking a step back. Like, this is kind of, I don't want to hurt them or hurt myself, so I'm going to take a step back. And it just takes a very certain someone to go, all right, let me take it 2 steps forward and really, push it further to get my voice out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And something, not to break it down to layman's terms, but something I think about often that is similar to that is I tell myself, because grew up around video games and everything, and what I tell myself is, and in life, if I keep on running into bad guys, I know I'm in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I think something that he said, he had one of his amazing speeches. He said basically, to him, there is no difference between doing bad things and letting bad things happen. In the fact that, as far as the laws and everything went back then, some of them are quite unjust and they have been changed. And so he basically said, like, you know, I'm a law abiding citizen, but when those laws are not, you know, my up to the principles of myself and I know that they're not right, then it would be just as bad as if I, you know, committed a crime or did something bad as to allow this to, you know, consent, whatever you'll put up with, or like, you know, whatever you'll allow, you approve of, basically. And so he can approve of that stuff. And so that's why, you know, he kept on pushing, even though, like, you know, a lot of people said, you know, like, you're doing a lot right now. Like, if you just give it time, like, you know, things will get easier and, like, you know, slow your roll a little bit. A lot of people said that and a lot of people took that stance. But what Martin Luther King said is time is neutral. And basically, you are the catalyst for things of change. You know, time just going down the road, that's not going to do anything but, you know, waste time where you could have been X much farther if you would have, you know, stuck to the grind like he did.
Yeah. I think that's a really strong quote from him at that time, because when I think about it, I think of time being neutral as like they're trying to tell him, like, oh, work out, people will help you. But like everyone knows, if you tell someone to clean your room, they're not going to do the exact same way you did it, and they're not going to do it in the same time or frame you did it. So like, why rely on other people and hope that they get your message done when, like, at the end of the day, you can rely on hope on them and build, you know, this trust, but like still instill your ways to get it done. But the longer you wait, like you're saying, the longer more variables happen. And I think what was going on at that time, the Civil Rights Act, is extremely timely. Because I believe if the Civil Rights Act was going on now, or that movement was going on, there's way too many distractions that would push it away from the public eye, and it wouldn't be as successful as it was then.
Yeah, that's a very good thought. I've never thought of it kind of like, if you pick up that whole entire event in historical, you know, actions and stuff and put it in today, I think it would be extraordinarily different. Obviously, you know, Barack Obama wouldn't be president and things would be extraordinarily different. But yeah, you're right. The fact of the matter is that people nowadays are inundated with ideas and thoughts and, you know, new things, so they can keep their attention. And also the fact of, you know, I feel like electronically and as far as technology goes, it would be a lot different. But I mean, you see other countries doing it, as far as, you know, Iran and some of the countries in the Middle East are having protests and stuff because of injustice, and some of that's more political injustice. But yeah, I mean, and to be frank, I know it would have been like a thing of, you know, you're born into this, so it's a necessity thing that you have to be strong, because, you know, if you don't, you won't be able to leave your home. Yeah. But yeah, I just think it would be so much different. And I can, like, once again, wrapping my head around putting myself in their shoes, I feel like I'm missing a degree of reality in my own head of what's going on.
Yeah. And I think too, it speaks on like when Rosa Parks started sat in front of the bus, and then the Montgomery bus boycott happened. In fact, like, I knew it was a while. I thought it was like a couple months, but like the fact that it was 380 days, which is longer than a year, like a peaceful protest like that in a smaller area or smaller region, that took place over, you know, a year. I see the power of that today not happening. Like 380 days is a long period of time. Like, some of you that are listening will be graduating college. Some of you that are listening, like, will be getting married or starting your life or moving to a different country. And like in that 380 days, those people were solely stricken on like, I'm not taking public transport. Like, I'm going to find the means to get there and nothing's going to stop me. So I feel like in today, like maybe a few months down the line, like, oh, there's no action. Nothing's happened. Like, we'll just move on. And like back then they're like, we're not moving on until there is action. And I think that was really strong of that kind of time frame to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of commitment that they had is nothing short of prodigious and commendable. The thing is that I hope, I mean, maybe you call me like an altruist or an idealist, but I think that something as important as that, naturally human beings would understand that it takes commitment and it takes time, and those things aren't going to happen overnight, and that it's going to be a big change that takes a lot of, consistent action. And, it's extraordinary that they did it for so long, because, I mean, I couldn't, like I said, I mean, unless something was extraordinarily important as, humans' rights. And sometimes I feel like today, maybe it wouldn't be important enough to do something of that nature, to change up your whole, basically your timetable, the way you go about your day for more than a year is,
it's something. And I think it's something that, like, the reason I talk about it, I don't see it today, is like, I'll take a recent example of what's going on with like the Golden Globes and women, actors or women in theater, is that like there's this huge divide between, one, the sexual harassment cases, two, this pay cut, and like three, not getting, notable exposure for what you've done. And I think, like, obviously I'm going to say it sounds simple, but like, if you take all these women who seem to be on the same side in that Hollywood world, and they take a step back and say, hey, I'm not going to act until you pay me, equivalent to my male counterparts, or like, you give us, decent exposure, or you understand like what we're going through, would change a huge cause in what's going on in Hollywood. Like, try to imagine a movie right now. Try to imagine your favorite movie without a woman, like, supporting actor or actor in there. And then once you start thinking, you're like, okay, they do play a part. Even if it's James Bond and it's, someone the girl that helps him out, like, she plays a huge part. So if they all took a step back and you have, I don't know,
an effeminate Jack Black.
If you have like a superhero movie with no, female counterpart or the equal balance to it, like just a superhero flying around. It could be cool to someone, but like there's so many movies out there that you overlook what the woman actor is doing because the lead may be male, but like there's a huge stepping stone right there for, some people are getting paid. The sort of article I read was like, so-and-so was paid $15 million for a reshoot, as, the supporting or the female co-lead was paid $5,000. And it's just something like that I think now transporting back, like Martin Luther King saw this, like, we're in a spot where we aren't being treated equal. And I think they'll take notice when we all take a step back and say, we're not going to support you, or we're going to work to make everything better so that everything on each side works more efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that there is some push and things of that nature, just in the case of, actors refusing to not act if, like, they're under a certain director, or, with the Harvey Weinstein stuff going on. Also, yeah, you're right. I mean, I feel like it's hard to compare both times because, I mean, now is fundamentally different as far as technology, as far as people, as far as, culture goes than then. But maybe one thing that they did have on their side is that, and it kind of works against them in a grand scheme, is that they had a sense of the world being small and the fact that they couldn't, hop on the internet and check out what Italy or, across the country is doing. So those changes had a more direct effect on, or at least, it gave them more confidence on them changing their community in itself, rather than feeling a little bit more small. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's social reach makes things different nowadays. Like, I think it's a very good point that, like, back then you had your community or your region, and that's kind of like what you knew besides what the newspaper was, telling you and sent out. And like, you get this, more cohesive feel everyone's kind of on the same page, and then that kind of slowly expands. You're like, oh, whoa, they feel this way too, or they feel this way, and like you have no idea like overseas how that's working or what they're doing, but I think that's a very important key to what was going on.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go over a few of in a speech that Dr. Martin Luther King did. I want to go over a few of his rules. There's 10 rules. And I would like to kind of talk about each rule when they come up, and I want to see how they relate to today and like how you imagine, either if you agree or like how you take what basically the rules, and I'll say them in kind of a brief succession. But so rule number 1 is believe in yourself. How would you equate that from back then to today? Like, how are they different and how are they the same? From the perspective of Martin Luther King fighting for civil rights, then how would you use believe in yourself, and then how would you use it in today, and if they relate, if you can, and
that's a tough one. I think that one, to me, when I hear it in today's society, it's a lot more generic and played out, and it still carries a message to you. But I think back then it's a lot more powerful when you have someone telling you and showing you like, I believe in what I'm doing and it's making a change and others are going to follow. But today, if someone my professor tells me like, oh, I need help with this paper. Oh, just believe in yourself. Like, it's a little bit, I think it's downscaled to what it means now than what it meant back then.
So you're saying it's a little, it's more diluted just because it's kind of one of those things that are now trite or overused, and kind of the more you use it, the less it means. But yeah, you're right. And back then, I feel like you said, going against people that specifically through their actions and verbs or words say, don't believe in yourself, and you're less than me or something like that, that's very powerful. So the next one is, I'll do 2 in a row because this one is kind of very similar. Be fearless is number 2, and then number 3 is fight for yourself.
I think I resonate more with fight for yourself in today's generation, just on the fact that I think, in all honesty, no one cares what you're doing besides yourself, right? You care about what you're doing, but then they care because it may affect their job, or they care because they loosely want to be friends with you or something. But I think today you have to fight for what you believe in and what's right. Because if you're fighting for someone else, their motive may be slightly different out of it, or what you're working towards may be slightly different. But if you're doing what you believe in and fighting for yourself, I think it can help you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I feel like that's basically the only person that, truly, you were born by yourself and you will die by yourself. And in between, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But the one thing that, like I say also, is wherever you go, there you are. And, you have to believe, and I'm going back to the second one, you have to believe in yourself enough to fight for those things that you want, and, be fearless. And so, for instance, let's string these together. You have to believe in yourself to be able to think hey, I know I can get there. I know I can reach my goal. And you also have to be fearless in the fact that there's going to be people that say you can't for whatever reason. Usually it's personal, not because you can't truly. And in those cases, you have to fight to kind of keep your dream alive and, hold on to that to achieve your goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Number 4. Keep moving.
Applicable. I think wherever you are, whatever you're at in your life or back then, it's important. It's easy to get stopped. As we touched on earlier, it's very easy to stop and take a step back and get comfortable and stop moving towards your end goal. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be obstacles and walls that take to keep going through or keep moving to get there.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things too. He, in his speech, he said, in connection to this, if you, if like fly, but if you can't fly, run. And if you can't run, walk. And if you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving. And the fact that whatever you're doing, whatever pace you're going, you have to keep moving. And the fact that there's nothing that happens, time is neutral when you wait. Yeah. You just kind of end up being more down the road, and it could be worse. But like, that's one thing. If it's powerful enough, you have to keep chipping away at it. And that's how greatness is created, in the fact that, those times when you really don't want to do it, or you can hardly do it, that's when it's more important. I relate it to kind of like, lifting weights or exercise. When it gets really tough and you can barely do it, that's when it matters the most, because that's when you're getting stronger, truly.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 5, follow your morals.
I think it's straightforward. I think it's something back then that probably needed to be said. As today, morals are preached more often and taught a little bit more, maybe because of this act, and maybe that's what brought it to tuition. But just follow what you believe in, fight for it, and don't, like, if you go outside of your own morals, what are you doing really? So.
Mm-hmm. And I think related to what he said in that like sense was the thing that I touched on earlier, which was the what's the difference between doing something bad and allowing something bad to happen when you could stop it from happening, or have some sort of way of being trying to hold justice to that thing, and the fact that you gotta have morals, and you got to believe in your own morals, or else you kind of get pushed around and get told what, to do.
Yeah.
Number 6 is act now.
I think it relates to some of the other quotes of like fighting for yourself or believing in yourself, that you just got to do it. It's going to benefit you. Time is neutral, like we've touched on a few times, and you just got to get it out there, or you might miss the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. This one, I'm a huge fan of this one, and I'll tell you the example of what he said, and I was like, dude, I'm ready to like kick down the world's door. It was number 7 is be determined to achieve excellence.
Yeah, I think that resonate. I think that's something that comes from maybe his education, and maybe someone he was motivated by. And I think that if you're aiming for just making it, or aiming for, the next day, at the end, you're just kind of average. But if you're aiming for your top goal, whether that be an example of being a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or being, the lead singer of a world-renowned band, like, you have to dream it to get there. Like, if you're always just dreaming, like, I want to be the best singer at my local dive bar on Wednesday nights, like, yeah, you could probably get there, but you're going to get stopped. Or that's like, once you get there, you're going to be like, all right, cool. Like, and get complacent.
Yeah. So the way I took it, and I think it's even like a little bit divergent from what you said, was it kind of, whenever I hear that or think of that, it makes me think of a couple things, and mainly some people, and the fact of, one time I was reading a Will Smith interview, and basically he was describing how he's the most competitive guy, and that when he was younger, his dad made him and his brother build a wall. I think it was his brother. And basically he said, you don't start out with saying, I'm going to build the biggest, baddest wall that anyone's ever seen, bigger than the Great Wall of China, bigger than like any wall that anyone could ever do. You start with saying, I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick has ever been laid. And you go on steps of that. And that's what it made me think about in his Dr. Martin Luther King's example. It was, if you're going to be if you're a street sweeper, be determined and be committed to being the best street sweeper you can ever be. And, it makes me think of, greats and legends like Kobe Bryant, or, entrepreneurial people like Andy Frisella, and the fact that they run this company, or even Michael Jordan, and the fact that, he's obviously one of the greatest who's ever graced this earth with basketball. But, the way he started out practices was chest pass. And I mean, simple as that, a chess pass. And so people would follow and say, well, if it's good enough for Michael Jordan, it's good enough for me. And, be determined to, achieve greatness and excellence in everything you do. It becomes greater than the sum of its parts, and the fact that, excellence on excellence on excellence achieves something way bigger than, people can. I think maybe even sometimes people can mentally, reach out as far as goals.
Yeah.
All right. Number 8, and I'll do number 9 too. Stay true to your principles and stand for yourself, or stand for something.
That one to me sounds pretty similar to follow your morals, just in a different context, maybe to a different person, but just, do what you believe in, fight for what you believe in. And at the end of the day, if you do what you believe in is right, you'll have lived the life you wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there's a trend going on as far as matching. I mean, you have stay true to your morals and follow your principles. You have stand for something. And I feel like all those, have a very, very similar theme. And, being an extraordinary speech teller, I think that there's a reason for that. But the number 1, and it's going to be kind of funny that he says this one, but he says, have a dream.
Yeah. I think, once again, that loosely ties in. I think that's strong. And having something you want to achieve, or something you want to work towards, or, something towards the end, have it, think about it, try to get there, or think about what it would be like and what little changes you have to make to get there. Inspires a lot of different thoughts, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, regardless of what your dream is, you to truly achieve it, you have to, stay true to your morals. You have to fight for yourself. You have to believe in yourself. All those things. You have to be determined to excellence. Whatever you're trying to do. I mean, like I said with Will Smith, it was, at the time of his, when he was describing the story as a kid, it was building that great wall. For me personally, it's being the fastest archaeologist and podcaster in the world. And not to be facetious or anything, but truly, I mean, the way you start out with doing something, or what I like to do is, so I have this dream. Now I'm going to take one step back. Where was I before I achieved it? And, but reverse engineer everything and, start from there.
Yeah. I think that's a great spot to leave on. Thanks for listening. We hope you got something out of it and understood the power of what was being done, and kind of understand how that relates to today's society and some events that may be going on, or maybe inspired you to, work towards your dream, or fight for something that you've been on the edge about fighting for. As always, iTunes, Google Play, radio, this, and that. Any final words?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for listening and, just being great. And please, like Julian said, reach out to us if you want on telling us what you want to hear, or even criticism, regardless if it's positive or negative. It's appreciated for taking the time to do that. Thanks, guys.
Later.